Mélanie Leroy, who has a background in chemistry, I believe, and in 2012 joined the gastro team in Lille, and she has a PhD in data health analytics, is that right, or something along those lines? And she's going to talk to us now. She's probably at the forefront of us learning more about the impact of esophageal atresia, particularly beyond the perinatal stage. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to talk about the long-term, like esophageal atresia is a long-term disease. Oh, no, it's not me. Okay. We actually published a paper with KICS, who has this title, and the point was more to say to the politicians that esophageal atresia is no longer just a surgical nor a pediatrician disease, but that action needs to be taken regarding the follow-up of adults. The paper is actually online. If you want to scan the QR code, you can access it quickly. So first, I would like to talk about the French registry, which is coordinated in Lille. So it's called Renato. It's been up running since 2008, and it's gathering data of patients at birth at 1 year old on antenatal diagnosis, clinical presentation, follow-ups, the surgeries they underwent, and so on. We have now more than 2,700 patients, and from this registry, we created a nested cohort of patients born between 2010 and 2012. And we first saw them in a research setting. They have been, there is a clinical follow-up way more regularly than the points I'm showing you on the slide. So at 6 years old, we collected data about digestive and respiratory symptoms, histological observation, education, speech therapy, quality of life, and so on. And we managed to get information about 380 patients. And so now we are working on the Transisome project, which I've been actually hired to manage, and we are seeing those patients. Now they are 13 to 14 years old. We collect the same data sets, and we actually added some omics analysis, which I will present you a little bit later. And the point, actually, the plan is to see them again before transition to the adult medicine and when they are into the adult department. So I won't go into too much detail on this slide. The point was just to show you what kind of information you can get from registry. The first one is actually the incidence. It's 1 point in France. It's 1.8 per 10,000 births, and it will be useful for the model we published that I will show you later. And so we also managed to have information about the digestive and respiratory symptoms, the presentation, the number of the occurrence, the incidence prevalence, and the description of presentation and the evaluation of the factor associated with those observations. We also managed to do the same thing with the COMAT6 studies, one at 6 years old. So I won't go into too much detail, but it's the same thing. And we managed, since it's longitudinal, we can also assess the evolution of the patient on the natural history of the patients. And so the project that is currently ongoing is called Transisome. It's the aim to assess the long-term outcome of esophageal atresia and also the transomic profile in adolescents. So it's a twofold project, one regarding health status, so it's clinical data that we are gathering, and one about omic profile. So the idea is to see if there is a change, molecular signature, I will say, in the protein, the metabolite, the expression of the genetic expression, so the transcription and the methylation of DNA in the EA population, and to see it's different from the patients that don't have EA but have the same age. So in France, when you are doing an endoscopy, you collect human tissue, you have to store it in the hospital. So we have biopsies of esophageal mucosa from 15 to 20 years in our hospital, so we can access them and analyze them in order to get the molecular signature. So that's our plan, and if we manage to have some biopsy that have been performed when the patient were younger, we will also look into that to see if there is a modification of this molecular signature. The idea is to see if there is some biological risk factor or biomarkers for a complication in adolescence. This project has been actually co-constructed with parents and patients. So there are several committees, one parent committee, one patient committee, and one of teenagers that don't have esophageal atresia but are very well aware of clinical research. And so we discussed a lot when we constructed the project with them. Is the question we want to answer matters to them? They also read the information letter in order to be sure that it's comprehensible. And they also work on communication. So far it's more about the presentation of the project, since it's a starting project. But they will also be involved in the communication of the results, of course. So speaking of schedule, the project starts in March 2022, and the inclusion of patients in last August. The inclusion will run up to May 2026, and after that, we have 2 years of analysis. So you will have to be patient to get the result, but it's something you have to deal with when you're working with a rare disease. It's actually a national effort. So we have all centers in France, and we also wanted to have some overseas region here because it's far away from the metropolitan France, so they have a different access to care. But it's important for us to have the big picture of every French patient. And so the goal is to include 300 patients and 150 controls. So far, we have 31 centers. They are all the centers that have allowed to perform the anastomosis. 22 are open to recruitment. We have actually 23 patients included in the main study. 7 into a plasma sub-study, which I didn't present very much, but if you have questions, I can give you more detail about it. And we have no control included yet. So since even if our main focus right now, my current focus is on the cohort of teenagers, we are really aware that there is more and more adult patients, and that's why we created a model about French patients. So it's based on the incidence of EA in France, 1.8 per 10,000 births, the birth rate in France, and considering different rate of mortality according to the date of birth. So before 1950, it's 0. It's 100% mortal rate, so there is no patient here. And then it's 50%, so there is this slope. And then it's a 5% mortal rate, so it's way sharper. So on the left, it's male, right, female, and in light colors, it's the pediatric patient, so under 18. And so we modeled this pyramid of age at different years. So it's from 2020 to 2120. And what you can see is that the number of pediatric patients won't change, but the number of adult patients will drastically increase. For example, we modeled that in 2030, we will have in France more than 7,000 adults, which if we estimate to look like 40,000 adults in Europe. And for the fun fact, we might have our first centenarian born with esophageal atresia in 2050. So in France, we don't have some adult cohort, but we already started to organize a transition to adult medicine. So the National Protocol of Care recommends that pediatricians follow the patient up to their 18th anniversary. And then we organize a joint consultation with the multidisciplinary team and the adult gastroenterologist around this 16th birthday. And then the follow-up by the adult medicine is every 5 to 10 years, depending on the presentation of the patients. There is actually a recommendation published by the International Network of Esophageal Atresia on how to manage symptoms and complications in those patients. And just like a last example of how things are performed in Lille. So this is the number of the patients that we see in consultation in Lille Hospital, in pediatric and adult medicine departments, ranking by age. So when they are 12 to 15, we prepare the transition. We start to say that the team that they have been seeing a lot in the year before is going to have to change because they have to go to the adult medicine departments, and then we organize in the right period the consultation, and then we make sure that the adult medicine manage to keep track and to avoid dropping out of care. Those patients in blue here, they were a little bit older when we created the consultation, the joint consultation. So we can see that there is a little bit of drop of care here. And actually the oldest patient we see in Lille Hospital is 37, which is not that old actually. So as I said, it's a team effort, national-wise, and also in Lille. So I would like to thank the team, Lille, and also all the French members of the Center of Reference for chronic affection and malformation of the esophagus. And I also would like to thank you for your attention. If you want to get more details about the protocol Transfusome, there is a website with the QR code here. Yeah, thank you for your attention.